Read that or I will serenade you. Strategic Wealth Group and its affiliates do not provide tax, legal, investing, or accounting advice. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, investing, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, investing, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. The material that follows should not be construed as an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy any security. We are not soliciting any action based on this material. It is for educational purposes only. Now that everybody's energy is really high, we'll get started. Woohoo! Those are the two lawyers in the room. Okay, so this is our third meeting. I've had a recurring question after each meeting. And has anybody wondered who's paying for all of this? We have a free meeting. How do you pay for the eat-in? Last we checked, they're not taking funny money. Mickey Mouse there. All right, so we want to give a little background and answer that question. So just a little bit, this group is still coming together. The pieces are being formed. When we started 2 months ago, this is being the third meeting, we didn't know if there would be interest, if people would be excited about building wealth and meeting other awesome people, learning new ideas about how to grow your financial freedom. Well, it's been a major blessing to see people have been excited and have been coming. So, a little bit of background on just how Jerry and I view business. Business is an exchange of value where each party gets more than they gave. And the word I want to focus on is value. So, if I had a bottle of Pepsi and you wanted that bottle of Pepsi, you could say, hey, I want to give you $1 for that bottle of Pepsi. I have to want your $1 more than I want my Pepsi, and you have to want my Pepsi more than you want your $1, right? And then we have a trade. So business is about value. It doesn't matter if it's the Pepsi or the $1, okay? All right. A little bit of story time here. You can relax. I'm going to read a little bit from this red book called The Go-Giver. How many people have read that? Oh, wow. A lot of people have an awesome book you have to read. So, last month we had awesome friend and speaker Dave Zook. How many people were here for that? Yeah. Is that amazing or what? Awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much for coming last month and tonight, Dave. And when you hear a guy like Dave Zook make an offhanded comment about there's a book he tries to reread every single year, I remember hearing that. I was like, wait, what's the book again? He said, The Go-Giver. So it's Bob Berg. I figured if Dave reads it every year, I should give it a shot. I thought it was profound. I really did. So I'm going to set the stage here a little bit just for a short story. So in the book, we have Joe. He's a novice getting started in his business career. He's a typical go-getter. In this portion, we have Ernesto. He's a successful chef, an entrepreneur. He owns the restaurant that this portion is set in. And we have Pindar, who is a wise billionaire, who's agreed to take Joe under his wing. So Pindar brings Joe to Ernesto to learn a lesson. So just before we pick up here, Ernesto was basically giving the backstory of how he was an immigrant 20 years ago, scraped up enough money. Hey, beautiful. Scraped up enough money to buy a hot dog cart and just started selling hot dogs on the corner of the street. Word got around, some business guys started meeting there for lunch. They put a syndication together to get Ernesto his first cafe. A couple years later, it's doing so well, Ernesto buys the investors out, owns the place himself, buys half a dozen more, and goes on to buy, in the next 20 years, several $100 million worth of commercial real estate in the city. And he's asking Joe, why is my restaurant backed out the door and the restaurants around the corner, they don't have that demand. So Joe thinks, well, you obviously have better food, you're a restaurant. Ernesto laughs. And we'll pick it up here on page 26. He says, a bad restaurant tries to give just enough food and service, both in quantity and quality, to justify the money it takes from the customer. A good restaurant strives to give the most quality and quantity for the money it takes. But a great restaurant strives to defy imagination. Its goal is to provide a higher quality of food and service than any amount of money could possibly pay for. He looked at Pindar, then back at Joe. Did the old man tell you he would show you his 5 laws? Joe nodded eagerly. He was about to learn the first law of stratospheric success. Ernesto looked again at Pindar. Should I tell him? Pindar said, please. So Ernesto leaned in and spoke in a conspiratorial whisper. He said, true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Joe wasn't sure how to respond. Giving away more value than you get paid for. This was their big secret. He said, I'm sorry, I don't get it. I mean, I appreciate where you're all coming from, and your story is obviously amazing. But honestly, that sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy. It's almost like you're trying to avoid making money. Not at all, Ernesto wagged his finger. Does it make money is not a bad question. It's a great question. It's just a bad first question. It starts you off pointed in the wrong direction. He let Joe ponder that for a moment, then continued. The first question should be, does it serve, does it add value to others? If the answer to that question is yes, then you can go ahead and ask, does it make money? In other words, said Joe, exceed people's expectations and they'll pay you even more. That's one way to look at it, replied Ernesto. But the point isn't to have them pay you more. It's to give them more. You give, give, give. Why? Because you love to. It's a way of life. And when you do, he added with a big grin, then very, very profitable things begin to happen. All right, so that was just a little teaser. Recommend getting that book. But a lot of people, I feel like, they want to make money. They have these desires of what they want. And the obvious answer is, if I had more money, I could do that. There's an order to things. So the first question should not be, does it make money? The first question should be, does it provide value? Is what I'm doing creating value? If it doesn't provide value, it doesn't matter if it makes money. So if you're involved in activities that make money but don't provide value, where's the satisfaction in that? True wealth is built by creating value. If it does provide value, then it has the potential to be profitable. And the goal is to always provide more value than you receive in payment. That sound familiar, Amos? Got it. That's on the bottom of Ames Quality Roofing, bottom of the quotes. I don't know if it's word for word. I pulled it from memory, but we want to provide more value than we receive in payment. So the first step is to add value. When we started this, we didn't know what the structure would be, and honestly, I didn't care. It didn't matter. We just thinking, how can we provide value with our experience? When my wife and I'll never forget sitting down on the couch after we had achieved our goal of financial freedom and passive income exceeding our monthly expenses, sitting down on the couch and thinking, okay, now what? And coming to the realization over the next few days and kind of how we soul searched and really evaluated what we were doing. And we decided, okay, instead of buying all the good deals ourselves, why don't we do this with other people? And so this year, as Jerry and I have been learning the syndication business, we didn't know of a better way to provide value to the community than to share our experience, bring in awesome people to share their experience so that we could all go somewhere together. So step number 1, add value. Second step, build a structure. But then the whole time you have to maintain your core values. So we went over the core values a couple times the last meetings. So we're going to jump into a little bit of the structure that Jerry and I are trying to come up with to, so right now, who's paying for it? Jerry and I. But that's all right. You give first, and then there's a way for it to come back. Even the Bible, it says, give, and it'll be given to you. I think a lot of us Bible-believing people, we feel dirty around money or dirty around making money. None of those things are true. I know that's not everybody, but for those that it is, he could have said, give, and don't think about anything else. No, you should give and expect to receive. So there's no problem making money, but just don't focus on making money. Focus on giving, creating value, and it'll come back around. So one of our ideas in how to perpetuate this thing and keep it going is to have sponsors, okay? So we see these as making up a vital part of our ecosystem here. When we're able to make and keep this meeting free, the immediate benefit that's kind of obvious is you can come for free. The benefit that you may not have realized, though, is by us keeping it free, it empowers you to be in a position where you can go to those around you, those in your social sphere, who are either interested in financial freedom, financial literacy, growing in some of these concepts, and you can then be the leader. You can say, hey, I think you might be interested in this, why don't you come check it out? So it empowers you to go out and create value for those you know. And it's easy, they don't have to pay to come, they can just come on. So we're seeing the sponsors as providers of services to investors and real estate professionals. And we want these folks to have a great reputation in the community. So just real quick, if you either are one of these people, I know there's a couple people here that we've talked to and are showing some interest. We're still putting this structure together, not exactly sure how that looks yet. But if you either know someone or are that person yourself, reach out to Jerry or I. All right. I'm going to go through our investor club quick. We hit that last month, but there's a lot of new people. So this is designed for investors who want to invest with a team approach. When my wife and I got started 5 years ago with, I was about to say hour, but that would be generous, with her life savings. That is the truth. So we started with $25,000 and we did everything. Went out, found the deal, vetted the deal. I'm inspecting these properties myself. We're pulling the financing together. We're closing on the deal. We're getting a rehab. We're getting a tenant in it. We're property managing. So I respect it. I still do that. I love it. But most people should not be property managers, even if you enjoy the rest of it. Am I right, Joe? It's a hard business, and it's very difficult to, number one, enjoy it, number two, be good at it. I happen to like it. I'm a very strange duck that way, but I enjoy working with the people, but it doesn't mean that you will. So this is for people who want to invest with a team approach in fully managed passive income opportunities. We do non-public, which are called 506B, and public 506C opportunities. And of course, there's no obligation. We're here to provide value. If you see something that you like, great. If you don't, nobody is trying to take your money for something that you don't think is a good idea for you. In fact, the SEC requires us to have pre-existing knowledge of your financial capacity, your experience, and if you can evaluate the merits of a deal. So if in our judgment this deal is not right for you, we have a fiduciary responsibility not to put you in the deal. So no obligation, but if you're not in the club, you don't see the deals that are coming out, and maybe there would be something that would suit you. All right. For those that are so excited they can hardly stand it, I did. And if you have your checkbook in hand, this is my daughter at her two-year birthday party last week.
You made her pay for it?
It just looks like a checkbook. So for those who are all excited, how do I join? Just real quick, due to SEC law, we cannot show any live deals until a couple things happen. Number one, indicate interest. This is my email address, michael@strategicem.com. We also have feedback forms at the end of the night we'll pass out. There's a simple check mark there, and then just fill out your email. We had a number of people turn those in. Some of you we haven't reached out to yet, turn them in from the last meeting. And a good number haven't heard back from the next part, a questionnaire. We're going to email you a questionnaire, just a simple background of your history in real estate investing, your current situation, and what you want to do in the future. So if you were expecting a questionnaire but didn't get it, check your spam inbox. I did a test myself and it went to my spam. So we got a number of them back, but there's a number of them still out there. So indicate interest, complete a questionnaire, and then we'll meet for coffee or a phone call and just get to know each other a little bit. You can ask us any question you want. We may have some more for you. So that's the process on the Investor Club. Current partners are automatically members. And that's all for me. Jerry, would you be so kind as to introduce Victor?
It would be my pleasure. Victor, before Victor gets up, I want to say a few things. You know, our lives are so defined by the people that we meet. In fact, earlier this evening I was talking to my friend Ray Hurst, who was here someplace, and he just ripped off a line that I think of almost every day. And that is that our lives will be the same 5 years from now, except for two things: the books that we read and the people that we meet. And I think one of the most intelligent things that we do that really moves our lives from one phase to another phase is being able to identify people that we want to meet with, that we want to connect with, because our lives tend to emulate the people that we are friends with. So we've had the pleasure and the joy of being friends with Victor and his wife Natasha, just an amazing couple, and we're just so thankful to be able to connect with them and to see how Victor has worked in the development business, which is the same business that we're in, and also the real estate business. He's a syndicator. He gets involved in a lot of very large deals. And you know, when you meet interesting people, they tend to introduce you to their interesting friends. Has that ever happened to anyone in this room? Well, because of Victor, Michael and I had the great and crazy and outrageous privilege of having dinner with a guy named George Ross. Anybody have any idea who that is? I'm not a TV watcher myself, but he's the attorney who put together all of Trump's deals for, 50 years or something like that?
37 years.
And he's a good friend of Victor's. And, you know, we could ask him any question about the legal issues of how you put together a deal. And I've been on the phone because of Victor. I've been on the phone with George already, asking him how to deal with certain issues and how we should propose a project and what have you. And it's fascinating to have friends who can connect you with their friends. Doesn't that sound pretty cool? But to me, the most impressive thing about Victor's friend George is we were sitting there talking, and he is what, 91?
He was 91 on Sunday.
Okay, so he's 91. So when we had lunch or dinner with him, he was only 90. But at 90, he honestly looked like he was 72. And the guy had more energy than any 6 guys at 65 that I've ever personally known. And we're sitting there talking. He's talking about his philosophy of life. And I know nothing about this guy, like at all. But he's telling me, yeah, he says, the problem with being my age is I have absolutely no friends that make any sense at all. He says, my wife wants to go to Florida, and we get on this plane, we fly to Florida, and the most intelligent thing any of these people are going to ask me all day long is, how much did the plane flight cost down here? He says, like, who cares about that? And he said, then they're going to want to know where we're going to play golf today and what restaurant we're going to eat at tonight. He said, these people don't even live on the same planet as me. He said, you need to have a life, you need to have a destiny, you need to have a purpose. And he said, at my age, I'm thinking I should spend my life pouring everything I've learned into the next generation so they can do even greater things than I did. I'm sitting there thinking, man, I should have heard that in church. That's like one of the most amazing things I've ever heard. So Victor is such a man who walks in that same level of passion and integrity, and I believe that this evening as we're listening to this man, that he's going to share some things that are going to totally switch something on in our brains, that are going to put the pieces together, they're going to take our lives to the next level. Are you ready? Yeah. Everybody give it up for Victor Menasce.
Thank you very much. Put up your hand if you've read my book, Magnetic Capital. Okay, a few. All right, for the rest of you, please go buy it. I need the money. I'm also the host of the daily podcast, the Real Estate Espresso podcast. And I thought what we would do tonight, if you don't mind, we're actually recording tonight. So we will record this as a podcast episode, and we'll see how it turns out. Just going to check the level here, 1 second. Okay. So welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. This is the weekend edition, and we are here live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Today we're going to be talking about Economics 101. And sometimes, when we talk about real estate, we get wrapped around the axle. We get twisted around all of these concepts like comparable sales and all of this stuff. And you know what? It actually doesn't matter. What matters is Economics 101, and that's what people often forget. And so we're going to take it right back to basics today. So let me take a moment just to introduce a little bit what I do today. I started out my career as a microprocessor designer, completely different industry. And it was some of the most fun I had in my career. But about 2009, I was getting burned out. I was flying back and forth to Japan every couple of weeks, building a new cellular network there, and decided to take a left turn in my career and do something completely different. And decided to get into the world of real estate investment and development full time. And that's what I did. So I built apartment buildings. Some of you actually came on a property tour that we did back in July here in Philadelphia. Put up your hand if you're on that tour. Awesome. That was lots of fun. So we were showing you what we were doing in the Philadelphia market, and later on in the talk I'll give you some of those examples. Today, I'm building larger projects together with my partner Dave Zook. We're building a 240-unit project in Louisiana. But I don't want you to think that I was born with any special gift, that I come from a different gene pool or anything like that. I started just like everybody else with 1 unit. This was my very first property. It was a 1-bedroom condominium in downtown Ottawa. The business case there, very simple. Ottawa's a government town. Long before Airbnb existed, I saw a need for medium-term executive rentals where people were on a housing allowance, whether it's embassy staff, parliamentary staff, and I started that business. This is not real estate. This is identifying a business need. And so what I'm going to talk about tonight is very simply approaching everything, and I mean everything, from a pure business perspective. Question for you. What is a bargain? This is a property in Detroit, priced $16,900. It's an 1,100 square foot house. Probably rent for about $800 a month. The question is, put up your hand if you think that's a bargain. Okay. So the question is, what's a bargain? Any takers from the audience? What's a bargain? Yes?
Something in a desirable area?
I don't know. What's a bargain?
Something worth more than what you paid for it.
Exactly. So if, I apologize, I don't have any US money on me. I've got a Canadian $5 bill on me. So if I took this Canadian $5 bill and I offered it to you for $4, you'd probably take that deal because you can make a clean buck right the next minute. I'm giving it to you at a discount because we have some notion of what this is worth. Now, if I offered it to you for $6, you wouldn't take it. That doesn't make any sense. And if I offer to you at $5, well, you might take it, but what's the point? So the question is, what is this house worth? Now Zillow, I don't know if you can see from the back, the Z estimate here says it's worth $19,688. Don't ask me how they came up with that number. Maybe that's one definition of a bargain. I look at it from a different perspective, and I want you to take your thinking to something very fundamental. It's called the laws of supply and demand. Very, very simple. Detroit, population peaked at 2.2 million a few decades ago. Do you know what the population is today? 650,000. So is there more supply than demand? That's why these houses are going for 20 grand. You can put it on your Visa card. So it's not just evaluating in terms of construction cost. It has to be viewed in the context of supply and demand. There's excess supply. That's why these houses are going for under 20 grand. Okay? So when you look at anything, I want you to look at it through the lens of supply and demand. And you want to be in a situation where there's always an excess of demand. You want that tipped in your favor. If there's too much supply, it doesn't help you. This is one of the greatest markets in the country. Seattle has some great employers. You've got Amazon, you've got Microsoft. Expedia is moving their headquarters to a building on the waterfront right in downtown Seattle. You've got Starbucks. There's strong jobs. It's awesome. Wouldn't you love to own property in Seattle? Here's the problem. Last year, absorption of new properties of rental properties in Seattle was about 8,000 units. Now, the problem is the developers looked at that previous slide that I just showed you of all those great employers and said, let's build. And today, there's 25,000 brand new vacant apartments in downtown Seattle. How many years is that going to take to get absorbed? Oh, and by the way, there's another 32,000 at the permit stage. So if you strictly look at the demand side of the equation, you can get fooled. You got to look at both. You have to look at both. So the question is, actually, we're going to do a little game here. So who has, let's say you're a landlord. Who has the money? The tenants. Exactly right. The tenants have the money. Is there someone here in the room? I need 2 volunteers. I need a volunteer that has no money with them tonight, and I need a volunteer with like $5.
I got no money.
You have no money? Is there someone with like $5 who can come up? You got $5? Perfect. All right, so we have our 2 volunteers. Okay, so this is a protein bar. It's a little beat up. It was in the bottom of my briefcase a little bit too long, so you can see it's kind of crushed here in the corner. But it's still good. Still good. This is a C-class apartment. Okay, and what's your name?
Jamie.
Jamie. So Jamie is a prospective tenant here, and I want to qualify him, but I can see he's got $5, so he can afford this. This is only $1, so I've seen proof of funds, so he's a good candidate, okay, for this C-class apartment. Now Michael here is broke, so I could sign him up as a tenant. But guess what's going to happen? As soon as I sign him up, I'm into collections. Why would you ever want to be in a business where you're setting up the game that way right from the very beginning? Now, if you can qualify your tenants and find that subset where you're not going to be spending all your time in collections, that's great. And you can do very well in C-class apartments. But if you struggle to make that distinction, then it's going to be a problem because the tenants have the money. It's not we who go raise money and buy buildings. We don't have the money, not yet. We're borrowing money. We're borrowing against that future income stream. The money has to transfer to us over the next 25 years in order to pay down that note. That's how it works. So if you are doing business with people who don't have money, you're setting yourself up for failure. Does that make sense? Real simple. Okay, thank you very much. Next, I need somebody. Does anyone have like $100 bill? Anyone have $100? Perfect. So Jerry is going to be my tenant. This is a Temple bar. This is an A-class apartment. And this is really nice. This is really nice. Now it's a bit more expensive than the other one. This is double the price. It's $2. But you know, I've seen his proof of funds, and even if he goes out and does his grocery shopping, he's got plenty of money left over. I don't have to worry about ever being in collections with Jerry because he has the money. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You want to set it up so that you make sure that who you're doing business with has the ability on a sustained basis, because you are selling them your apartment not just once when they sign the lease, you're selling it to them every month. Every month. It's like when you go to the grocery store. The grocery store earns your business every day. Not just once when you say, I'm going to shop at Safeway or Aldi or whoever you shop with. They're making the sale every day. And they know you're going to be hungry the next day. But they're doing business with you every day. And it's the same thing when you're a landlord too. Okay? So I live in Ottawa, Canada. And unless the property is within about a 30-minute drive of my house, it could be anywhere. It really doesn't matter. So why would I choose something that is just okay? If it's not within a 30-minute drive of my house, I still want it to be really great. If I happen to be lucky enough, if I happen to have won the geography lottery that says that, within that radius of my house, there's the deals of a lifetime, the stream of investment of a lifetime. Fantastic. But chances are very low that for any of us, myself included, that that's the case. Some people are born, they have that geographic lottery. Now, there's the other kind of geographic lottery. We're very grateful to be born here where we are, and maybe not in the ranchitos of Caracas, Venezuela, or something like that. We're very blessed to live where we do, and we get to live a great life. But that's not the same as being in the best place to invest in real estate. So live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. Okay? Today, I invest principally in 2 markets, actually 3. I didn't put the third one on the slide here, but I invest actually in Philadelphia. And the second is in Louisiana, and you'll see, for reasons you'll see. I want to be in that situation where there's excess supply and demand. Excess demand, a shortage of supply. And so do you. This town is on the Gulf Coast. It's on the Interstate 10 corridor, and I-10 runs all the way from Florida all the way to California, all along the Gulf Coast. This town is called Lake Charles, Louisiana. It's not a household name. They don't have an NFL team or anything like that. The reason this town exists is because it's at the epicenter of the network of natural gas pipelines. It started out as a natural gas importation facility. If you go back to the Arab oil embargo in the 1970s, Richard Nixon made it illegal to export hydrocarbons from the United States. And so there was no oil exports or natural gas exports from the mid-70s up until 2015 when President Obama opened that up. So there's no export. But with the tremendous growth of domestic natural gas production, those pipelines have been turned around, and it's now an export facility. This little sleepy town of 200,000 people has $118 billion, I'm not exaggerating, $118 billion of natural gas, petrochemical, and seaport expansions over the next decade. 46, 47 billion currently under construction. So this town needs everything. They need supermarkets, they need self-storage, pay attention, Dave, they need everything. They need housing, they need multifamily, they need workforce housing, they need everything. That's why we're in Lake Charles, Louisiana, because there's that mismatch between demand and supply. This is one of the facilities, this is the G2 facility in what's called Fort Cameron. It's a 1,200 acre liquefied natural gas plant. 1,200 acres. You can see they're building the piers along the shipping canal there for the ships. And these ships, they take compressed natural gas. They get a 600 to 1 compression. They load it on ships, and they put it through the Panama Canal. With the widening of the Panama Canal that opened in 2014, now these mega LNG ships can go through the Panama Canal to ports on the Pacific West Coast, markets in Asia. And here's the real thing that's quite interesting. If you go back a couple of years ago, Europe purchased 0 natural gas in the United States. Last year alone, Spain imported 30 billion cubic feet of natural gas from Lake Charles, Louisiana, and growing. This is another view of the G2 facility. This is the Phillips refinery. I mean, you can't even get the whole thing in an aerial photograph. The scale of these things is just, it's hard to fathom. This is, not Magnolia, Cheniere. This is Cheniere. Another one of the mega plants. To put this in perspective, that ship is about 700 feet long in the shipping canal. So you get a sense for the scale of these plants. Next quarter, Tellurian, which is a Houston-based company, is going to be breaking ground on the Driftwood facility. The entire United States export of natural gas last year was 20 million metric tons. The Driftwood facility alone is going to be 27 million metric tons of capacity. So they will more than double the export capacity of the United States with just that one facility. You get why we're here? It's kind of cool. I want you to think about what it takes to be a good investor. I'm going to switch gears here into talking about making good investments. Now, if you're looking to raise capital, we're talking about the opposite side of the same coin. And what we're really talking about is making sure that you have a fit, a perfect fit for your investment goals and a project. It's got to fit like a pair of shoes. And when we talk about shoes, it makes perfect sense. Everyone says, okay, I go to the shoe store, I see a beautiful pair of shoes, and my gosh, they're on sale. It's my lucky day. But if they don't fit, they're not a buyer. Nobody gets rid of them. Everyone understands it perfectly, but all of a sudden you start talking about investment, and people get very awkward. Well, it's nothing awkward about it. It's like a pair of shoes. Just treat it exactly the same way. And it'll get very comfortable. Right? So, if you're looking to raise money to do it successfully, I discovered, and this is the core of my book, Magnetic Capital, I learned to raise money in the tech industry. I raised several $100 million, primarily for technology ventures, corporate buyouts, did private placement memorandums. We took one company public. So this is where I learned to raise money. And then when I moved into the world of real estate investing, I kind of relearned the process and discovered, oh my gosh, it's exactly the same. And then when I saw this repeatable formula, I discovered that, if there's certain ingredients that are there over and over again, it's really, really easy. It's that natural fit. When your foot goes into a shoe and it's effortless. But if it's a force fit, man, it's painful. So if any one of these ingredients are missing, raising money is really hard. And if any one of these ingredients are missing, don't invest. Don't put in the money. So you want to look at it from, it doesn't matter which side of the coin you're looking at it from, it's the same criteria. So, Number one, relationship. Number two, trust. Number three, what's your track record? Number four, you've got to have a compelling opportunity. Number five, you've got to have that perfect alignment between the goals of the money and the goals of the project. So I'm going to dive into these in a little bit more detail. What I'm talking about is genuine relationship. I'm not talking about networking where you go collect as many business cards as you can in a night. Networking has a very utilitarian feel to it. Put up your hand if you want to be used. Nobody wants to be used, right? It's really about building genuine relationships. And it's direct and network relationship. It doesn't mean that you're going to do business together. You can get different things from different relationships. You might get introductions, you might get access to opportunity, you might get advice, you may get access to capital, you might just get friendship, and that's all good. Now, if you have a genuine relationship and you have an opportunity that's truly compelling, it would actually be disloyal not to offer that to someone with whom you have a meaningful relationship with. Right? So I never ask for money. And you shouldn't either. Are you uncomfortable asking for money? You should be. So never ask for money. But what I do is I offer people the opportunity, if I have something that's really compelling, to offer people the opportunity to collaborate with me on that project. And it's that simple. And if it's not a fit, cool, that's fine. You like that? Yeah. Oh. Amos like this. Think about a natural human relationship. Maybe two people eye each other from across the room, and then they decide to have dinner together, go out on a date, maybe go see a show. And a long, long way down the road, through many, many, many steps, they might decide to get together, get married, and start a family. That's a natural human progression, human relationship. But if you skip even a couple of steps in that natural process, you go from a natural relationship progression to creepy in a heartbeat. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about, right? So don't go to creepy. How often someone will connect with you on LinkedIn and boom, I've got an offer for you. You need search engine optimization for your website. Who are you? It's creepy. So don't go to creepy. Second element is trust. And this is more than just are you dealing with an honest person. You've got to have alignment of intention. It's going to be very difficult to trust if you're aiming in different directions. But it's a whole series of questions. Like, can I trust you to put together a good plan? Can I trust you to execute the plan? Can I trust you to hire the right people? Can I trust you to communicate in an open and transparent way? Can I trust you with small commitments? And on and on and on and on. And if some of those things aren't there, it chips away at the trust. It's a psychological contract. It's not a simple one. It's one that's built over time. Now, if that trust is there, then actually decisions happen fairly quickly. But when you hear someone say, you know, I'm going to need another 3-4 weeks to do the due diligence, there might be a clue that there's still some trust building to be done there. That make sense? Next is, what's your track record? Show me that you know how to repeatedly make money. Show me that you have the ability to overcome the pitfalls that will inevitably surface as they do in any project. What's your track record? This is so vitally important. And if you don't have a track record, you know, I hear often from new investors saying, well, I can't raise any money because I don't have a track record. How am I going to get a track record if I can't raise any money? Well, you think about it the wrong way. This is not like your grade 3 math test where if you collaborate with your neighbor, you're cheating. Business is a team sport. You want to be working with people. You know, people don't invest in the self-employed. People invest in businesses. And businesses have sustainability. They have scale. They have the ability to run independent of just one individual. I should have the ability to go for a week on vacation on the beach and the business still runs. That's a business. If all of a sudden things come to a stop, then that's a problem. That's not a business, that's a job. So if you don't have that experience and you're looking to get into that business, then go find someone who has the track record and go work with them for a period of time. Go work with Jerry for a period of time. It doesn't have to be for a decade. It could be for however long you need to develop the experience base that you can, in fact, borrow some of that credibility because you've earned it legitimately. Next, you've got to have a compelling opportunity. Now, this is where most people start. I've got a deal, I've got a deal, I've got a deal. It's all about the deal. And you know what? It's never, ever, 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 ever about the deal, ever. Because a good deal, badly managed, of course, is no deal. So people can screw it up. So what you're buying is never the deal. You're buying the team that you're working with. That's what you're buying. You can have an amazing team take a mediocre opportunity and turn it into something great, and you can have a bunch of screw-ups take a great deal and make a mess out of it. It's always about the people. That's the only differentiator. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about real estate or any other business. Bricks and mortar. It's how do they create that experience. It's always about the people, no matter what the business is. So, what is a compelling opportunity? It's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. It's a little, for one person it might be a medical office building, at an 8% cap rate or better. For someone else it might be industrial space. It's a little bit like saying this image on the magazine cover is beautiful. It's really in the eye of the beholder. But you have to develop for yourself what is going to be your definition of beauty as it relates to real estate investing. And don't do, a mobile home park over here, and apartment complexes there, and industrial over there. Get to know something and do it really well, and really understand that well. So then you can repeat it over and over and over again. I'm going to share with you some of the things that we've done here in the Philadelphia market. And this, you know the area around Temple University in Philadelphia. Okay. So this is to the south of this area here is Center City in the Fairmount District. To the east is Temple University, and to the west is Worthington. And this little square here in the middle is Girard College. This is a boarding school, a very kind of exclusive boarding school. It's in a walled compound. It really doesn't interact with the community at all. But it's kind of a dividing line. South of Girard College is much more affluent. Townhouses south of here typically go north of $500,000, $600,000. Same townhouse north of that line historically would have been half. So, and every city in America has that line where you go 2 blocks too far and you're in the hood. And that's exactly what this is. You go 2 blocks too hard and you get too far, you get in a very rough area. We call this strategy buy on the line, move the line. Now, we want to buy just on the wrong side of that line, not too far, but just on that line. If we can develop enough of, or redevelop enough of that line, well, now the line has been moved, it's on the other side of our property. We can then go do it again, and again, and again, and again. Now, if you just do 1 or 2, nobody cares, nobody notices. But if you do 10 or 20, all of a sudden the marketplace says, oh, I get it, the line is moved. And you hear people talk about building in the path of progress. Well, you can. How about be the path of progress? Now, you might say, well, I don't have the resources to do 10 or 20. Okay, that's fine. Get a few friends together. You don't have to do it all yourself. This is a building, actually I'll show you where it is. So it's actually right here. That's this property right here. That's called 28 West College Avenue. Oops, went the wrong way. We decided, as you probably know, Philadelphia is a city that does not have a lot of parking. And parking is such an issue that I know a lot of people who live in the city who will not use their car, because if they use their car, they're gonna give up their parking spot. When they get to their meeting, they have to spend 20 minutes looking for parking, and then when they come back, they gotta spend another 20 minutes looking for parking. So they'd sooner take an Uber than use their car. That's how bad parking is in Philadelphia. So if you have a building that offers structured parking, that's a differentiator in the market. And so whenever we can, we endeavor to build parking into our buildings. We want to build right on the line, and we also want to incorporate parking if we can. This is an 11-unit building, brand new construction. It's fully leased up. And these are the finishes on the interior. So this is not A class. It's not C class. It's kind of B plus. This is a view of the downtown skyline from the roof deck. So this is a decent property. These units are renting for, test my memory here now, $1,550 a month, $1,700 a month. And we built this building at $112 per square foot, our construction cost. So we bought the land for $130,000. Oh no, this is another building. This is a 9-unit. Let me see if I have the. No, I don't. Okay, so this one's a block away. This one's on Thompson Street. This is another one we did that. I could show you a dozen of these, but we don't have that much time. So I'm just going to show you like 2 or 3. But they're all the same, and it's not an accident. They all look the same. It's by design. So what we endeavor to do in any one of these projects is we want to create enough value, to Mike's point, we want to create enough value that we can actually refinance the property maybe a year and a half into the project and recover 100% of our investment through the refinance process. Now, we're holding an asset that's generating positive cash flow and we have zero cash tied up in it. It's called the proverbial no money down deal. What they used to talk about in the late night infomercials back in the 1980s. But the banks have essentially tried to make it impossible. So the way it is possible is you invest, you build it, you create the value, and then you do an equity pull through a refinance to pull those chips off the table, and then go take that money and go do it again, and again, and again. And once you have an asset that you don't have any cash tied up in, you basically have that infinite return at that point. You're not going to sell it, because what would you buy in its place that would be as good? This is your quintessential buy and hold strategy. So this particular building, we built at $106 a square foot. We finished this at the beginning of 2018. It was fully leased up. Our total investment was $1.42 million. It appraised at 1.97. About 72% loan to value. Got back 100% through the refi process. This is a 9-unit building. Those of you that were on the tour in Philadelphia saw this building. We went up into the top unit on the very top here. It was designed to be very similar to the previous one. It was a little bit more expensive. It was in a slightly different location. We actually paid a little bit less for the land, as it turns out. It's a nice, fortuitous situation. We spent more money. We spent $1.62 million. We just refinanced this on the 20th of December of last year. So we just got the cash back from DNB First Bank on the 20th of December. So they gave us an appraised value of $2.25 million, and we got back 100% of the investment. Isn't that cool? And it doesn't matter whether we talk about a 5-unit building, a 10-unit building, or a 200-unit building. The math is pretty much the same. And it's not an accident. We design it this way. This is a project that we're working on in Lake Charles, Louisiana. This is a 240 unit project. Now this particular parcel of land, you can see there's a detention pond here. This is Weaver Road, this is Henry Road. This is the site for the apartment complex. We're building a 128 bed senior assisted living facility right here, and then medical office building here. So this whole thing in total is about 26 acres. We've broken ground on it already. It's in a nice area. This is a residential neighborhood next door that's they're still building. The Roman Catholic Church, very large parcel here. Our neighbors just down the road over here. There's a brand new supermarket opening up. So it's a happening area. It's in the path of progress. This is the design of the medical office building on the very top picture. I wanted to achieve a particular feel here. I didn't want your standard steel and glass or concrete and glass brick. I wanted to create something that would fit within the community, would have a little bit of a village feel to it. This is a single building, and yet by breaking up the exterior elevation, by making the roof line a little bit more interesting, it looks like a collection of buildings, but it's one building. This is the assisted living. There's two styles of assisted living. There are what are called the big box assisted living facilities. These are the ones with the big swimming pool and the underwater treadmills and all the amenities that 1% of the population use. That's not why they're there. And they make a lot of money, but that's not why they're there. We are advocates of the residential assisted living model. These are folks that their entire lives have lived in single family homes. They don't want to go in a multi-story tower. It's just not, it's not where they want to be. They don't want to be in an institution. You know, I call it a hospital with a better paint job. It's just not, it's not the right thing. So in the residential assisted living model, you have a higher ratio of caregivers to residents, so you get better care, you get better food, because you're not serving it on a steamer tray cafeteria style. It's prepared fresh by the caregiver staff, so the caregiver staff know the preferences of the residents, and it's much more personalized service. So it's a better experience for the residents, and they're living in a home. It's a smaller group home. Now we're building an entire campus in a neighborhood, so we get the numbers up, we get the scalability that you want to get some efficiency and get some economies of scale, but we're not an institution. These are all small, independent homes where there is that really tight relationship between the communities and so this is the kind of stuff that I get really energized about. I love this stuff. And I don't know, I just love it. Let's talk about the last element. This is alignment. This is that perfect fit between the goals for the money and the goals for the project. And it's questions like, how much money are you tying up? What's the size of the investment? How long are you tying it up for? What's the rate of return? What's the risk? What's the security? What's the safety, which is a combination of risk and security, both those together? What's the tax consequence? What's the control structure? All these different questions. And if you don't have a perfect fit between those goals, don't take the money and don't invest. It's not going to work. Now, when you're dealing with unsophisticated investors who have never invested before, and you ask them, what are your goals? They'll say, well, I want to make money. And I don't want to lose money. It's kind of a fuzzy set of objectives. That when you're dealing with investors that are more sophisticated, who have more practice, they'll be very, very precise on what their criteria are. They'll have a dozen criteria, and if you meet 11 out of 12, it still doesn't work. It almost works. But something that almost works doesn't work. It's seductive, because it looks like it works, but it doesn't work. So how do you get good? You do this over and over and over again. Don't try, like I said, and do different things, every week. Focus on something, at the beginning of this year, I made a decision to start a podcast. And I wasn't gonna do a monthly podcast or a weekly podcast. It's a daily show, 7 days a week. 7 days a week. And I knew that if I didn't do it 7 days a week, I wouldn't get good at it. Now, if I compare the quality of the episodes that are coming out today compared with the original episodes a year ago, there's a difference. There's a difference. I go back and listen to some of those and I go, ooh. But it's practice. It's practice. Nobody ever, the first time they got on the bicycle, really just nailed it. I mean, you fell over, you skinned your knee, probably more than once. And it's the same thing. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you've got to develop that skill and develop it and practice it. And, one of the things that we do, both Dave and myself and a bunch of us, we put ourselves in the environment where there's other people who have been successful. You need 3 things to be successful. You need the knowledge, so congratulations, you're here, and you're learning. But if you walk out of here saying, okay, I've got all the knowledge, I'm all set, I'm sorry to disappoint you, you've got a third of what you need. It's not enough. And people who go on a course or go on a seminar or get a degree, it's not enough. Second thing you need is you need the emotional drive to make that happen. You have to overcome your own emotional obstacles that get in your way. And then the third, and this is the most important, this is the most overlooked, is you need to be in the right environment. And that is the differentiator. Jerry mentioned George Ross. By the way, whenever the name Trump comes up in a meeting, it's like a bomb goes off in the room. Put up your hand if you agree with everything Mr. Trump has. Okay, good. Well, I don't either. And neither does George. What I love about George, he's not a yes man. He's not one of these guys that would tell Donald what he wanted to hear. He would tell Donald he's full of crap. And he told me I'm full of it sometimes, and I love it. George's personal net worth is about $300 million. Now, how did he do that? That was his side hustle. He never earned that as an attorney. There aren't enough hours in a lifetime. I don't care what your hourly rate is to make that as an attorney. That was his side hustle. He happened to be in an environment that spilled so much opportunity he couldn't help but make money. That was the differentiator. So you got to put yourself in the environment where you're surrounded by other people. If you want to be an elite sprinter, you go and train against the folks that you're competing against. That's how you get good. If you're going to be an Olympic ice skater, go and train at one rink in Barrie, Ontario, and all the Russians and the Japanese, they're all at that one rink. They all train together. You got to be in the right environment. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Find a coach or a mentor. Join a mastermind. Come to groups like this, where you can connect with other people who are in the trenches doing the work every day. That's how you get good. By that exposure. If you're sitting at home behind your desk looking to Google for answers, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I have some free stuff I can give you off of my website at victorjm.com. I'm happy to connect with you. This is a magnetism scorecard which I developed primarily for syndicators, and it helps you identify how you are doing against those 5 criteria of relationship, trust, results, compelling opportunity, and alignment. So as you are evaluating your conversation, you can figure out how am I doing and where are the gaps. So it's kind of a useful tool. And even as an investor, it's the opposite side of the same coin. You can use that as a tool to say, where are the gaps? What's missing? And I think with that, I will open it to questions. Michael, how would you like to do this?
Run around with
With the mic?
the mic. So if you have a question. This thing on? Are we on? kudos.
So about 5 years ago, I did my first 342 unit deal in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Had a lot of great success with it. Before that, I syndicated for private money. Had about $7 to $10 million worth of hard money on the street at any one time. I found a whole lot of people who really enjoyed lending me money that I then lent out on the street as hard money. And they all said that they didn't want to be Mikey when I wanted to invest. You're Canadian, that might not be something that resonates with you. They didn't want to be first. They didn't want to be in my first deal. So how did you go from bundling money and syndicating IT products and IT businesses to investment grade real estate? And talk us through that process of making that transition.
That's a very good question. So, first thing I did is remember when I got in the market. I got in the market in 2009, 2010, probably the best possible time to get into the market, probably in my lifetime. It was hard to make mistakes because you're buying things at far below construction costs, and all you had to do is, not screw it up, and you would still make money. So, folks that just did that and that alone, if that's their only measure, it's not a very good measure. But we made mistakes. We made actually a lot of mistakes, quite humbling. And but it was at a time when the market was able to wallpaper over a lot of those mistakes. We then and then what we were buying actually is properties from the city of Philadelphia. We bought 15 properties from the housing authority in an auction in one day for $350,000. So, our cost basis on a lot of these properties was extremely low, and all we had to do is not screw it up. Now, many structures were demolition worthy. Some of them we preserved the exterior structure, demolished the inside, and put a new building on the inside. Now, it was at a time when you had to be careful, because if you spent too much, then you were outpricing the market. We had to be very careful. But we were able to do that successfully within a defined envelope. From there, the leap from that to new construction was a very small step. And then the leap from that to greenfield development was also a small step. I'd also done a bunch of land development projects in between in other cities. So each time you do something, don't introduce 10 new variables. Introduce maybe one or two. Most of the learning happens not within a project, but between generations of projects. So, for example, if you only did one project, and that project lasts 5 years, then you have one project's worth of learning in that 5-year period. If you do 5 one-year projects in that same time period, you're going to learn 5 times as much. And if you do 32-month projects in that time period, you're going to get 30 extra learning. So you want to get volume of learning and try not to take on projects that are going to be too long from a learning standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How do you communicate that though? When people say, I'm nervous about being your first.
Well, so the other part is, and I learned this early on in the tech industry. So back in 2004, I went to acquire IBM's embedded microprocessor division. It was about a $50 million division of IBM, doing about $50 million a year in revenue. And I knew I didn't have a track record to go down Wall Street and raise what we thought would be about $250 million. So I hired my boss. I went and found a guy who ran Motorola's automotive division, which was a $1 billion segment of Motorola at the time, and he had Ford and Mercedes and Toyota and Volkswagen. So he owned the processor business for 52% of the world's vehicles, and I took him with me, to go visit Citicorp Ventures and Credit Suisse First Boston and all these other private equity firms. I had him in tow as someone who had the track record. And the deal was, here's a guy who was at the time in his early 60s, didn't want to make a career out of it, but he was willing to do one more project. And he was willing to tutor me to be the successor, to be his successor in that role. The whole venture was my idea, but I couldn't pull it off on my own, so I hired my boss. right now, even on South Lake Village, which is the 240 unit apartment project, I feel perfectly competent to run that project. I've got an engineering background, I think I'm smart enough, all that kind of stuff. But when a lender looks at me, who's gonna write a $30 million check, they look at me and say, Victor, you don't have a track record. So I found a guy who's built 10,000 units, and he's our partner in the project. He's working with Dave and I. He's built 10,000 units in his career. He's built hotels, he's built office buildings. So when the question of track record comes up, I put Bob up front and say, talk to Bob. Now, I'm there with him, of course, but he speaks with a lot of authority, and you know, he and I are equals. We communicate, you know, 6 times a day, and it's great. But when that question comes up, I put Bob to the front. That's how we do it. You know.
Good.
Miss Anna?
That was very good. Took a lot of golden nuggets from that. One question about moving the line for you. So I attempted to do this in about late '07 in Houston, Texas, in an area that was really growing, and the other side of town was not so nice.
Is this the Heights District?
Right near the Heights, exactly. I
That's
flipped
a
a house in
perfect-
Heights and I lived right there.
Perfect
So
location.
I bought it a little too early, and of course the market crashed and sold it. Well, we went by last month, and now the values are crazy, and we wish, man, we had gotten in there. So obviously we didn't time the market well and didn't see what was coming in '08. But given kind of where we are now in the market cycle, and the fact that we might be, you know, on a recessionary path in the next couple of years, what type of analytics do you do to determine where you're going to go to move that line, and how long it's going to take you to move the line, given the economics of the area and the market cycle, so that you're not going in too soon? And how long are you looking to stay there until that line actually moves?
That's a brilliant question. There's 2 answers to that. One answer is supply and demand. Now, and I recognize that demand can evaporate. You can look at the metrics and say there's lots of demand. I'll give you a very simple example. There's a lady who's actually an investor in several of our projects. And some of you may know her. Put up your hand. Do you know Jane Robinson, Tiny Sala? Yeah, a bunch of you know her. So Jane just sold her house in Fremont, California. Fremont is the East Bay, it's just kind of the edge of Silicon Valley, but it's been a very hot area. And Tesla is located there. There's a lot of companies, like a ton of investment there. She sold her house about 5-6 weeks ago. And in October, the title agent that processed her sale did 60 transactions in the month of October. She sold her house, actually it was the first week of December she sold her house. He said in November, we did 10. So they went from 60 transactions a month to 10 in the span of a month. Things can turn very, very quickly. So you've got to be sure that you're going to be in an environment that is where the demand is going to span economic cycles. That's why I like, and again, I don't want to be, you know, overly promoting Lake Charles. I'm not here to promote it as an investment opportunity, but when Tellurian goes in and makes a $15 billion investment over 7 years, right? That spans economic cycles. You don't care. Like, you're looking past that recession. So, you know, when the community's adding, you know, 25, 35,000 permanent population in a small area, it spans the economic cycle. So that's what I look for. It's the supply-demand thing. Right?
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Mark. Very interesting what you're saying. I just wanted to know about Brewery Town, that area.
Yeah.
Like, what value do you think? I understand like 1650 is probably like a very good point for professionals, but what reason did you get involved? Like, what kind of difference do you feel that you will make for like your tenants in that area, and what is the future like potential for that area?
That's a great question. So right now, there's been a lot of new product introduced in Philadelphia in general. A lot of it, especially in the downtown and, you know, in Center City, I think about 4,000 units of new construction in Center City, a lot of it condo. Rule of thumb is that in condo, 75% are gonna be owner occupied, about a quarter are investors, so about a quarter of that, about 1,000 is gonna appear in the rental market. So if I'm introducing product, now those condos, they're gonna rent for maybe 2,000, 2,200 a month. Those are in buildings with amenities, but if they don't rent, and there's excess capacity there, they're gonna move down market, because they're gonna want the rent at some price, they're not gonna be willing to keep them vacant. So they're gonna come down market. At what point do they come down market? Now I'm starting to compete with them directly. I don't know. But when we start to get within $100, I think we're starting to compete directly. Now, fortunately for us, that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. What we've been exploiting is that areas like the Fairmount District have continued to be very high demand. Rents have gone up, and our value proposition is: are you willing to live or walk away for $150 a month? A lot of people are. You're still, 5, 6 blocks walk to the subway on North Broad Street, so you can be downtown in 10 minutes. So we still have a lot of those values. We're offering the nice views of the downtown skyline, but we're not pricing at the same point. We're pricing just below, and that's the value proposition with brand new product. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I had a friend that was telling me about it, who acquired like several units like over the years, but I think it got too expensive for him to develop everything, but.
Actually, I'll tell you a story of a property that we just sold, and it was not the intention to sell it. So here's what happened. This was a lot that we acquired. The address is 2245 West Thompson, and it was only going to be a duplex. So, and we didn't have time to do it, so I sold it to one of my students, a real estate student, and for him to develop. And they screwed it up. They spent way too much on the construction. I was expecting the end value of that building to be around $350,000, $360,000. Well, they spent $350,000 on the construction, so they were just out to lunch. Now, they were able to rescue it. What they did is they turned it into a 2-unit condo building and sold the units individually to owner occupants and ended up selling it for $475,000 total. So they were able to pull out a rescue by converting its use from a rental to owner-occupied condos, highest and best use. They were able to rescue it that way. That's one of the things I love about real estate, is there's often another solution. I'll tell you, sorry for all the stories. This is another one. A developer in Ottawa, where I live, built some luxury townhouses in the wrong location. They were priced way too high. He was never going to sell them. He was about to go bust. A buddy of mine acquired this group of 6 townhouses. I said, wait a minute, we're like 2 blocks from a college. I'm going to put a basement apartment in every single one of these, turn the 6 into 12 units, student housing, boom. Oh, done. Like he converted the whole project concept. Like the project was done, but he just introduced that accessory dwelling unit to double the density, and all of a sudden he had a project that penciled properly. So there's many ways you can rescue projects if you just really pay attention to where the demand is and how you can meet that demand. Business is only about solving business problems. That's all it is. And so is real estate. It's solving a business problem. That's what we're doing in Lake Charles. They've got these mega plants to build. We built an RV park. Now, I don't want to be in the RV park business, but when you've got thousands of construction workers coming into town, they have no place to stay, so they bring an RV. They'll park in a farmer's field until they get kicked out. I mean, you can't stay at Walmart too long, like they have to leave. So some of them are commuting an hour from Beaumont, Texas. So, we just opened this RV park literally like a week ago, and we're getting, almost $700 a month for dirt. Right? 200 units. We'll get $150,000 a month in revenue for 200 RV spaces. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just curious about the little head. Been in and out of that area a lot, but so I'm curious about what you think about, you know, Temple is like, Temple is an island of little. I was really worried about my daughter going here, but actually it turned out to be a very safe place. But outside of a very of a bubble, and Temple was a pretty scary area.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about how, and I know Temple is actually growing and doing quite well. So in terms of moving the line, do you see that line moving out more, or there? I mean, I'm familiar, very familiar with that area. So.
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we started, our initial idea back in 2010, 2011 was to service Temple. At that time the campus had 13,000 students. There was a shortage of housing at the time. Then the university opened their own residence building with 1,200 beds, and that changed the dynamics of the market overnight. So there is actually a surplus of student housing, back to supply and demand, a surplus of student housing around Temple. So we are not focused on student housing at all. Now some people who focus only on that tried to adapt. Some said, okay, we'll take Section 8 tenants or what have you, but that's not a great.
Right around Temple, they actually overbuilt. That's what I was wondering about, because Temple has tons of money and political connections.
Yeah, so right now, student housing around Temple is overbuilt. So now, one of the things we noticed, like a lot of these student housings were built in the old Philadelphia townhouses. So they would maximize the number of bedrooms, because in the student housing mindset, you're charging by the bedrooms. So you say, okay, in this space I can get 4 bedrooms, 4 times $500, $2,000 a month, boom. You would even take out a living room and make another bedroom if you could, in the student housing mindset. But what we found was there was a surplus of 3, 4, and 5 bedroom units in a shortage of 1s and 2s. And the reason we discovered that is we had a lady who's a graduate student who rented a 3-bedroom apartment for just herself because that's all she could find. And we said, oh. She said, yeah, there's no 1-bedrooms anywhere. So we've stopped doing 3 and 4 bedroom, and we only now do 1s and 2s. Because that's where the shortage is.
Right.
Back to supply and demand.
Right.
Get it? Supply and demand?
Hi, my name is Dwight.
Hey, Dwight.
And where do you go to discover the supply and demand? You talk about supply and demand, but how do you find, how do you just randomly pick a city and start looking into select supply and demand, but where do you go to define that supply and demand numbers?
That's a good question. You never want to necessarily be a trailblazer to do something first yourself. You want to see proof of that already working in the marketplace. So I'd rather be a fast follower than a trailblazer. Take something that's already demonstrated to be working and copy it. Just copy it better. It's safer. So if there's already proof of that strategy working, there will be experts in the market that have that knowledge. Your job is to find them. It's like a scavenger hunt. You don't have to invent anything, you just have to find the information. How we found out about Lake Charles, one of my partners, her neighbor's brother is the port director of Lake Charles. Again, we weren't looking to Google for answers. We found out about the information firsthand from the guy who's negotiating these deals, these mega deals, to lease major parcels of land to these plants. So we find out what's really happening. Yeah, you can go to the Economic Development Authority, and they're running around behind people, putting together PowerPoint presentations, extracting data, and just trying to curate the data, but they don't really know. You got to find out from the people that are in the trenches doing it firsthand, in my experience. So it's just a lot of relationship building, asking a lot of questions, asking a lot of naive questions, even if you think you know the answer. Often you don't. And, you know, ask the same question, you think you know the answer of 5, 6, 7 people, and pay attention to the outlier data that you get. Because there's sometimes something in that outlier data that you need to pay attention to. You know, one of the mistakes that we often, as human beings, fall prey to is something called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is, if I told you the world is, if your outlook is the world is a dangerous place, you'll go look for that data and say, yeah, look, see, the world's a dangerous place. If your viewpoint is the world is a beautiful place, and you go hunting for that data, you'll find plenty of evidence the world is a beautiful place. Whatever your point of view, often people go find data to reinforce that point of view. And that's great, it makes you feel good, but doesn't do good business. Because, you know, you need to be aware of the things that can surprise you. And so you gotta be very aware of of that process of confirmation bias and be constantly testing. You know, I'll give you a very simple example. We're building this assisted living project in Lake Charles, and we had people telling us there's a shortage of assisted living. So we said, okay, let's go find out. So our operator, Lo Hornbuckle, went and toured every single facility. And he looked around and he said, man, these are disgusting. I can beat these guys any day of the week. And then that wasn't good enough. We then went and commissioned a third-party market study from an independent consultant to go get their point of view. Is there a real business opportunity? So, it wasn't just the anecdotal, it wasn't even our own first-hand information. We actually commissioned a third, make sure that we were getting it from all angles. I think it's important to do that. Does that answer your question? You sound like you have more of a question.
Kind of.
Go ahead.
So, you go and talk to the experts in an area, let's use my home, your Lebanon City.
Okay.
Let's use my local town that I live near, which is Lebanon City. It's fairly low end through the north half of the city. Well, I would say about 80% rentals, mostly single family homes. And there's kind of a massive increase in prices in the buildings and the houses in the last 3 years due to lots of warehouses and stuff going up along a State Route 22, which is north of here a little ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm literally just getting into this real estate investing, just started in April, learning about this. So how do I, as a newbie, go about finding the experts and then convincing them or talking and creating that relationship so they're willing to, one, share information with me, their knowledge, but then also maybe be able to kind of create a mentor type relationship so that I can, figure out that supply and demand and where that little niche in the market that I can have to exploit.
I don't have a paint by numbers answer for you, but let me give you a couple of ideas that may work. Chances are those people, if they're looking to scale their business, have some problem that needs to be solved. I don't know what it is. Maybe they need to get better at tenant screening. Maybe they need to get better at negotiating with their suppliers. Somewhere they have a problem. I don't know what it is. But maybe you can find a way to add value to them in some arena. You may have some skill that you say, you know what, I can help you with that. I've been doing that all my life. I can do that. I can really help you with that. And then you start to develop a relationship where you're adding value and they'll want to add value to you. That's one idea.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I'll just add on to that. When you're just starting out, it's a completely different ballgame versus when you're doing the stuff that Victor's talking about. So for us, You know, my big sales pitch to my wife to give me her inheritance was, I've learned all I can from a book, even if we lose all of it, we're at least in the game. So I wouldn't suggest that as a sales pitch, but it did work. It did work. But the point is, the first one is it's about the education. So when you get in the game, you put your or your wife's hard-earned money into a project, the learning goes completely differently. So, you know, you can pick up what you can from a book, you can study, you can look for those people that are, you know, the experts, but also just getting into the game. One property, if you manage it well or you have your attention on it, can be, a lot of errors can be forgiven because you're not at a big scale. So,
Here, you know, the number one differentiator for any project is resilience. And I mean that as a human quality, because every single project is gonna have some surprise. I don't care what anybody says. Do I have like 2 minutes to tell a story? This is about our RV park. This is about a $3 million project. It wasn't supposed to be a $3 million project. It was supposed to be a $2.3 million project. Okay? We had every single neighbor of the property oppose this project. Every single one. We were denied access to utilities. We could not get an easement or what's called a servitude to get access to water or sewer. So we said, how do you provide an RV park with no water or sewer? So we said, okay, and where's the city get their water? Oh, they drill a well. How deep? 500 feet. Okay, well, we can drill a well. So we drilled 2 500-foot wells. And we have a municipal grade water supply that's as good as the city of Lake Charles. How do you get access to sewer? Well, there's this company called Hoot, and they manufacture peat-based sewage treatment plants. We have our own captive sewage treatment plant. They tried to block us access to electricity. There's a pole with a transformer on it, like 10 feet from our property line. And the servitude, the easement for that power pole was not recorded properly. There was a hand sketch. And our neighbor argued that the easement didn't go to the property line, even though every single other easement anywhere in the state, the utility draws the easement to the edge of the property line. So they tried to block access to power. We said, okay, we'll need about a 10 megawatt diesel generator. We might be downwind some days, but no big deal. I said, okay, we'll give you the 10 feet. The road, there's a city street coming up to our property. Actually, it wasn't a city street at the time. It was a road bed built by the city. You would think the city put the road in the right place. We were about to start work, and our neighbor produced a survey showing that the road encroached on their property, therefore it was not a public right of way, and we had no right to use it.
Oh my goodness.
We have a property with no access? What? We didn't believe it. It took us about 2 weeks for us to convince ourselves that they were right. So we said, okay, we're gonna move the drainage ditch. We'll spend a couple of $100,000. We're gonna move the drainage ditch. We're gonna move the road 25 feet, and we'll build the road in the right place. You would think the city would put the road in the right place. They didn't. It was 25 feet in the wrong place.
Crazy.
Now, in the end, you know, we called the senator, and he sat in a meeting, and, you know, all this kind of crazy stuff, and he eventually looked at them and said, really? That road's been there 10 years and you're gonna quibble about it now? And so they eventually gave us, they got embarrassed into giving us an additional, they didn't give it to us, they gave the additional 25 feet to the city. So we were able to build the road. But all these things, like over and over and over, for an RV park, right? This is just real life, it happens. Now, we could have been stopped so many different times, and I know there's a few of our investors in the room here, so I apologize for the delays, but we were able to overcome these. And it had to do with an attitude that says, winners cannot be stopped from winning. We were not gonna roll over and say we give in ever. And it just takes that inner certainty that you have to find and say, I'm not gonna let anything stop it. Hope that helps. Yeah.
Could you tell me, what was that main point?
Oh, that's a great question. So our neighbor is a community arena. It's called the West Cal Arena. And some of the members of the board have a financial interest in a competing RV park, and so they didn't want us to exist. There's always a reason. There's always a reason. Yeah.
Any questions? Anybody else?
What was what was the third market you're in, besides Philadelphia?
Oh, sure.
Louisiana?
Okay, so third market. Put up your hand if you've ever been to Banff, Alberta. Yeah. Beautiful place, isn't it?
That's spectacular.
Spectacular. So Banff, Alberta is Canada's version of Aspen.
Yeah.
And we get about 6 million visitors a year, same number of visitors as the Sistine Chapel. It's inside the boundary of the national park. And because of that, there's a moratorium on development. Hotel rooms in the summer months go for $600 a night. There you go, supply demand, there it is again. So we are acquiring a portfolio of properties and looking to acquire land in the neighboring village of Canmore, which is 15 minutes away. It's actually, in my estimation, a more beautiful town than Banff itself, with fewer tourists. And would you be willing to drive 15 minutes to save $150 a night? A lot of people would. That's the business case. That's it. Nothing complicated. Supply and demand. And here's another element of supply and demand. You've all heard of Airbnb. Airbnb is part of the sharing economy, kind of like Uber. There's no constraint preventing one more incremental Uber driver from putting his car into the Uber service. That supply will grow until there is an equilibrium of pain where everybody is suffering a tolerable level of pain and nobody's making any money. Same thing can happen in Airbnb. There's no constraint on supply unless there's a constraint on supply. So what does that look like? Could be regulation. In the town of Canmore, they have enshrined it in the zoning. So if you're in a residential zoning, you could not do a short-term rental, you'll get fined. If you are a tourist or vacation zoning, forget, tourist is, you can do either short-term or long-term, and vacation is only short-term, you cannot do more than 30 days. So it's enshrined in the zoning, and so it's the zoning that also constrains the supply. So again, even though we had this constraint of the national park next door, we also want to make sure that it doesn't get overbuilt where we're building. We want to make sure that that's controlled too. So always paying very, very close attention to what can happen on the supply side of the equation. Okay.
Questions? How about a round of applause for Victor? Like drinking from a fire hose there, Victor. Catch my breath here a little bit. Jerry, do you have anything that you want to say? I want to go over a couple things here. Okay. Well, just very grateful for everybody showing up. It was so cool before the meeting to see everybody engaging, and I knew it was a room of entrepreneurs when I asked everybody to get in their seat and only about a quarter of you obeyed. So we like that. You're welcome to stay after. There's no hurry getting out of here. Meet some people around you. If I could have some help passing out feedback forms, I would be grateful for that. If a few guys would jump up and help, that'd be awesome. Next meeting is February 13th. We'll be back here at the Eden, second Wednesday of every month. And that will be the meeting that we will give away the signed copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. So it has both Robert and Kim Kiyosaki's signature. Got to spend a bunch of time with them on a couple cruises at the rich guy, not the rich guys, the real estate guys. Yeah, right. So Robert and Russ with the real estate guys put on an investor cruise every year. That's amazing. Jerry and I have been the last 2 years. got to have a lot of meals with awesome people. Connected Victor there, and Dave Zook and Robert Kiyosaki. After the giveaway, and so the feedback forms that you're getting now, if you can fill those out and leave them at one of the tables or give them to me. A couple of you took them with you and scanned them back in and sent them to me. So however you get those back, that's what we then draw from for the copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. After that, Victor was generous and brought a signed copy of his Magnetic Capital. So turn the feedback forms in, and his will be next that we'll draw from. Wow, I think that's everything. Jerry, anything? Next meeting, February 13th. Yep. Back here. And still working on something cool for that. We've got a couple ideas. Haven't settled on one, so we will announce that when we do. And thank you all for coming. Give yourselves a hand.